My name is Chris Peiser. I'm the Broadcast Communications, Film and Media teacher at the Hazleton Area Career Center.
My name is Crystal Lyons. I'm an English teacher at the Hazleton Area Career Center, where I've been employed for the past 5 years, and I teach 10th and 11th grade English.
The title of our project is Engaging Short Films. And with this project, what we wanted to do was have the students create a short film based on an adaptation that they've created from a piece of literature.
So Mr. Peiser approached me back in December to come up with this project-based learning, where we would take something from the English curriculum and intertwine it with a broadcasting project.
The other thing I really wanted to accomplish with this lesson was incorporate more of the core academics into this lesson. And our building is kind of unique, and it's set up in a way that really allows us to do that better than maybe some of the other career and technical schools.
I think the beauty of our career center is that students have the opportunity to engage in not only the trade and industry preparation program. We have a number of programs in our career center which are high yield, high demand occupations. But furthermore, we have the academic component of the school that's present in the building as well, and it gives our teachers an opportunity to work on integrated projects together, have the academia and the trade and industry components blended. Well, I think the benefit of having the academic and the trade and industry component in the same building and having those programs in close proximity to one another is the fact that the students get and receive a comprehensive education. They're blended together, they're not taught in isolation. And students can make sense of things that they might be learning and concepts in their academic courses which transfer into the trade and industry. And ultimately, I think that helps our students think critically, logically, develop a deeper understanding, and as far as the state assessments are concerned, they entered that domain of having to perform on a test with a very different mindset.
And we decided to do this engaging short films. So we sat down and we looked through the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade curriculums, and we ended up pulling different literary works, from short stories to plays to even novels. And we came up with a comprehensive list where the students would then select something based off of that. And when we originally selected the pieces, we wanted to make sure that it was something that the students actually enjoyed, because if they enjoyed it, then they're actually going to put more work into it. And we narrowed the list down to about 11 or 12 choices, and at that point, that was the start of the project. Now, the interesting thing, even though we're in a comprehensive building that allows us to work together, Mr. Peiser and myself have very busy schedules. I'm not only an English teacher, but I'm also the mock trial and debate coach here at the high school level, and Mr. Peiser has a lot of other projects involving the school district that he's always involved in. So we actually use technology to work through planning our project. Over the course of a few weeks, we used Google Docs, and we sat down and we would comment back and forth with each other until we ended up coming up with our Engaging Short Films project. Well, one thing that was very clear from the beginning, we needed to look closely at what we selected. The students who ended up selecting short stories to produce their short films had an easier time because it was a shorter material for them to work with. Whereas the students who selected the plays and the novels, it's a larger reading source for them. So they had to be very selective with which scenes they would select and use for their project. So looking at this after we're all done, we're definitely going to look at our list and focus just on short stories, because it focuses them to have a short film, which is what the project is.
The script was incredibly intense to keep revising and editing, because when you're working on a film, it's different than working on any other piece of literature, because it's going to be said. And if it doesn't flow right, your movie's not going to flow right. And it's going to just be a lot harder to capture the scenes you want to in the way you want to. So basing it on a piece of literature, while it would help a lot, obviously, with the dialogue, because there's pre-established things from the book, there'd still be so much revision to be done because things have to flow differently. and it's something I was definitely not used to.
The interesting thing about this is now they're able to take something that they've read in class and bring it to life and put their own spin on it. It's no longer just words on a piece of paper. It's their interpretation of those words. Just like when we go to a movie and we see the movie version of a book that we've read, the book itself is one piece of work, but when you see it brought to life, it's completely different. It's through the eyes of that person's interpretation, and now they actually get to do that for themselves.
Written dialogue and spoken dialogue, they aren't always very compatible, because while you're reading scenes, you're reading them in your head, and you're reading them as this kind of two-dimensional media. And when you bring it onto screen, it's alive. It's in your face. It has to flow like conversations flow. It has to feel like it's real, like these people are real people who are alive, and it's not as immersive if you have to keep it to the 3D version that the book allows. So while books can be incredible as what they are, bringing them as direct adaptions with no changes would be both impossible and boring.
I'm a big movie buff, and I love this project because it allows me to show students how a film is really put together, how a scene is shot, different camera angles are used together. When students come to me and I give them their first project where they have to shoot multiple angles, they tend to shoot things in sequence. So if there is a line by one actor and then another actor and then back to the first actor, they tend to shoot that sequentially how it would end up in the final edit. They'll shoot the first scene of the actor talking, and then they'll shoot the second line from the second actor saying their line, and kind of they'll bounce back and forth and shoot it the same way it gets edited, and that's not really the way it's done. With this project, I focus on what's called the triangle shooting method, where you have your actors run through a scene. And just like they do in Hollywood, they have actors will run through a scene multiple times, and they'll get used to doing it exactly the same so that the edits match up. You'll shoot what's called your master shot, which is kind of like a wide shot showing everything in the scene. And the actors will run through and they'll say their lines. Each actor will say their lines, and then they'll strike the set and they'll move to usually what they call a single, which is usually an over-the-shoulder shot showing the one actor, and they'll perform that whole scene again where both actors will say their lines, but the focus is on the actor who's speaking at the time, and you'll see their face. Then you'll switch everything around, shoot the same scene one more time, and get it from the other angle and show the close-up of the second actor saying their lines. And then when it all gets put together, you edit those 3 shots together with a couple other things, something called inserts and cutaways, and maybe an establishing shot, and then you get your scene. That style of shooting, that triangle shooting method, is really the technical focus of this project.
Movies, it's a process. It's not you just film something and then throw it into the computer and it comes out, AAA movie, big blockbuster. There's a lot of work that goes into it and a lot of things you have to consider, and it doesn't come all at once. You learn things over the years, and little things, very little things, and you won't notice a difference for a long time. And then eventually you'll start seeing, when you make something, it just looks more and more professional until you get to a point where you realize that, like, 2 years ago, what you were making was nothing, and now what you have looks so professional because of the things that you learn when you're in here. And just little tiny things like lighting makes a huge difference. Just the position of your camera, if it's slightly off, it just won't look as cinematic. And the 3-point filming method is one of those things. If you want to have consistency in a scene with dialogue, you need to do that way of filming. You have a master shot that shows both people, and then 2 single shots, and you run through the scene each time for each one. And the only thing you really need to worry about is your actors being able to recite everything the same way. And it just really helps when you can cut right on someone's action when they're doing something, and it just makes it seem like it's all fluid and it's all happening at once.
like Anthony said, film is a process, and you learn a little something every time you do something, and then it adds up, and then that's what really makes the change. Because I mean, you can learn a lot from book work, you can learn a lot from studying under others, from watching movies, but honestly it's the experience, it's just going out and doing it that really teaches you what you need to know. Because my first scene that I shot is this alley scene, and it was my first experience really ever using the triangle method or even having more than one camera person. Before that, I always just kind of soloed everything. And then all of a sudden there was a lot more to think about, and that scene turned out all right, but it could have been a lot better if I had a better idea of what I was doing. Now rolling into the second scene that I went to shoot, I had a much better understanding of like what I wanted it to look like and where to place my cameras, and so just the experience, and you have to fail forward in order to succeed. So you got to learn from the mistakes and keep rolling with them in order to truly advance. And I think life and film in every process is just that. It's always going to be an advancement. There's always going to be another step to take, you're never going to get to a point where you're like, all right, here, I made it. There's always another level of success to strive towards, and I think that's very clearly seen in film and something you got to keep in mind when you're entering into it.
This project also allows me to incorporate all the foundational stuff they've learned up to this point and kind of put it into one final project, utilizing all those skills that they've accumulated through the course of the 1 or 2 or 3 years that they've been in the program. This lesson is kind of a culmination of all those things, and then this last lesson kind of puts all that together and shows them a practical way to do it.
Before I joined this shop, movies were all magic, and there was no way anybody would ever figure it out. And then you come here and you learn how it's actually done and realize that it is still magic, but there's a way to understand it and harness that magic.
I think it definitely is almost always the background content or the subliminal things, the subconscious things that really make or break a film. You can watch a film, but it's honestly, you're never even going to really notice the things that made it that film for you. I know, when they're doing Star Wars, like the original music they use compared to the music they use now, it's a totally different film. You would never get the same feeling, and it's almost not even the same story. It's always the little things. It's not really the big things that are going to make or break it. And with my restaurant scene, I think there's 3 restaurant scenes, but they're all the same concept. That's really where I wanted to expound upon this and really try, for the first time, doing all kinds of background stuff. But I think a good thing to remember, though, going into a complicated scene like that, is you got to know where you're going, have an idea of what you want, and have that planned out. But as a director, what you need that other person there with you, to be in charge of a lot of that. You need your floor director. And a lot of the details in this scene, it came out great, but I was focusing on the directing, I was focusing on my actors, I was focusing on like main concepts of what I wanted in the background, but I had my floor director right there who really was thinking of things and was just taking the initiative to make sure that scene worked together. And that's a big part of film, is the teamwork working together just as much for the story as anything else.
By them having to actually write their own script for this, it shows that they have that deep understanding of the selection, and it shows that they understand the plot and they understand how these characters work, because part of the project required them to look closely at those characters and look at the time periods and see how they were going to bring the actual time period and the setting. So all of the literary elements that we teach within our English courses, they then brought to life on screen.
I think, just like DJ said, there's so much that goes into the background. There's so much that goes into the things that you don't actually consciously notice while you're watching movies. There's just so much that you have to think about when you're setting up your scenes, because the way the colors work, the way the people move, the way the background looks, it all can break or make a movie. And it also, when you're talking about film, there's the potential for making movies that are set in different time periods than you're currently in. And when you're thinking about that, and you're thinking about, okay, how am I going to make it look like the 1920s when there are 2012 Dodges driving around outside? It's incredibly detailed, the stuff that goes into just the backgrounds of the scenes. And the movements of characters and the dressing of characters, and it's all much more noticeable than it would have been if I'd never have had the opportunity to try to work on a film myself and have been in this class.
So one of the rewarding sides of the project is the fact that I had past students stop me in the hall because they were excited. They were asking me questions about the literary works. For example, one of the selections was The Monkey's Paw, and they would come up and stop me in the hall and say, okay, what happened after Mr. White and the White family received the paw, just to make sure that they had the plot accurate for their film.
What's great about this lesson is the students really get excited about it. They get to produce their own short film. So there's always a lot of anticipation, there's always a lot of excitement, and the students are really into doing this project. So there's not really any motivational issues.
Before I worked on this project, I've always been a go-getter. I've always been the one that, I don't want to wait for anyone else. I just want to have this task. I want to get it done as soon as possible, and I want it done right. And I'd also, like other times I had to work with people, if they're not as enthused about something as I am, I'd rather just do all the work so it comes out to my full vision. But going into this project, it was just way too big. Like even starting this project, that was my mindset. But then all of a sudden I came to this place and I was like, whoa, there's way too much for me to do alone. So I had to find other people. And sometimes you're gonna find them who they share your vision, they're on board, they wanna help. And other times, maybe they'll help, but they're less interested. So I think it's really a matter of, you gotta find the people you can trust, but it's also about delegation and knowing your team's strengths and weaknesses individually, because it's basically, skill sets are like a deck of cards. We get kings and aces in one category, but we might get twos or threes in another. And it's all about, putting those cards together to play the right hand, giving the right person the right job that they can handle and achieve that maybe you can't do alone, but working together you can achieve so much more. And teamwork is a must, especially in the film industry.
Project-based learning is what works for our current generation. These are hands-on students. They need something that is realistic. It's no longer a student walking into my classroom and saying, why do I need to learn this, or when am I ever going to use this? Project-based learning allows the students to actually implement that into real-world situations. So taking something that we've done in an English class and putting it now into a broadcasting setting where they're going to be shooting the film and they have the different jobs, whether it's a producer or editor or anything else that they may use, it's realistic, it's real world, and it has some value, it has some meaning, and it's something that they will take away and use when they leave the schools and graduate.
Well, my view on project-based learning, and again, I came from the field of music education, where essentially our students' product and the assessment is very authentic. So project-based assessments, to me, make a lot of sense. They're a true, authentic form of assessment in which students can engage in real-world thinking, project-based learning that's applicable to their lives and to post-secondary or career preparation after high school. And it gives them an opportunity to perhaps deviate from the textbook and engage in problem solving, critical thinking, and really attacking some problems that are relevant to their lives and give meaning to what they do.
The other great thing about this project is they're not just doing this project to get a grade or to just present it in class. What we plan on doing with this project is we're going to actually be doing 2 film festivals, one in cooperation with Gallery Night at the school, and one is going to be in cooperation with the Hazleton Art League, which is a community-based art organization that kind of just showcases local artists and all different kinds of artists, whether it's visual artists and painters and music. And they have this big event every April, and this year, for the first time, we're going to incorporate a film festival, and the film festival is going to consist of this final project.
I think even looking towards the future, there are a lot of benefits of working with Mr. Peiser. I think the English department blends nicely with broadcasting in general. There are poems that we can bring to life. We can take other works and turn those into other forms of media. I've had students in the past where they would actually sketch out the plots of different short stories that they've read. Well, we can turn those sketches into maybe a short film, or whether it's cartoon versions or other forms of media.
The template that was provided by Marty and the TAP program really allowed me to really break down the project into every individual component. And at first, honestly, I thought it seemed a little redundant. I thought, why are we stating the same stuff over and over again? But after working through it and kind of finally finishing up the template, I realized that this really gives you a perfect roadmap of your project that just takes you through it every step of the way and allows you enough room that you can make changes, and you could insert in some of what Marty calls just-in-time learning. If you need to refresh your students on something you've learned, or there's something you kind of didn't think about and you get to it, there's enough flexibility in this template that you could insert those lessons and make this project work.
One of the biggest challenges we had with the project is just actually implementing it into the program itself. With a very hectic and crazy winter and 17+ 2-hour delays and a handful of closings and early dismissals, it was hard to start the project when we actually wanted to. The original goal was to start this at the beginning of March, but the crazy schedules just didn't allow it, and it pushed the project back. And then that turned into time for our NOCTI testing, so that delayed the project even further. So one thing that we're definitely going to do for next time is start this probably in the first half of the school year, the first semester, where there's less distractions and less interruptions to allow the students to fully engage with it.
I don't think this project is done. I think it's something that's going to continue to evolve year after year. It will only get better and better as we learn from the experiences and the mistakes of the previous year. But I think this template and the TAP program has really given me the tools I need to really just fine-tune this project and make it just the ultimate project that I'll use in my classroom every year.